I think Donald Trump has been incredibly selfish with his money. He's got something like $100 million that he has raised, and he seems to be keeping it either for his legal fees or for his next campaign. And I think if you're going to be the leader of a party, then you've got to pour some of that money into the races that you, in fact, created. You always worry with Trump that he's only thinking about getting personal revenge for the people who didn't support his Stop the Steal movement. And I think that I think Trump was a really good president, but I think he's been a bad ex-president. And I'm sorry about that. I think it's hurting the party, which needs to reformulate itself around some of the things he taught them, but can't do that as long as he's getting in the way instead of helping out.
So we're taping this just a little bit before these midterms. I mean, are you basically feeling like this, conventional thinking is red wave and the House and the Senate, they're going to get everything back, win a couple governorships, and then we'll reverse all this Biden insanity. Are you on board conventional wisdom?
No, I'm hopeful, but I'm not certain. I think we're going to win the House. I think the House looks pretty good. But the Senate is really tough, and it's a tough map for one thing. And then there's the fact that they keep blaming Donald Trump for picking certain candidates, Oz and Blake Masters and guys like that. But the question is really, is that the problem, or is it that the GOP won't support those people? They seem to have pulled money out of Arizona, a very winnable state. And I'm concerned that maybe Mitch McConnell is thinking, I'd rather keep the minority and not have these people come in and defy me and rebel against me, then let's take the Senate back. Hard to really know. First of all, it's always hard to know what Mitch McConnell is thinking. It's hard to know where his interests lie. Yeah. But at the same time, I also feel a little bit like we're being gaslit. The polls are telling us no, the red wave is coming back. Nancy Pelosi saying, we're going to keep the House. I wonder if we're being gaslit a little bit, and maybe the red wave will, in fact, appear in spite of some of the narrowing polls. But I am concerned. I'd like to see the Senate go back. I think Donald Trump has been incredibly selfish with his money. He's got something like $100 million that he has raised, and he seems to be keeping it either for his legal fees or for his next campaign. And I think if you're going to be the leader of a party, then you've got to pour some of that money into the races that you, in fact, created. You always worry with Trump that he's only thinking about getting personal revenge for the people who didn't support his Stop the Steal movement. And I think I think Trump was a really good president, but I think he's been a bad ex-president. And I'm sorry about that. I think it's hurting the party, which needs to reformulate itself around some of the things he taught them, but can't do that as long as he's getting in the way instead of helping out.
Is that your way of saying you'd be sort of Team DeSantis if they have to make that decision ultimately for 24?
I would love to see DeSantis run, and yeah, I would support him. I wish that Trump were the kind of person, I mean, this is truly what they call wish casting. I wish he were the kind of person who would say, I did my job, I came in at my moment, I changed things around, which he really did. And now I, ordain that DeSantis will inherit my mantle and move on. DeSantis is a kind of mini Trump, there's no question about it, but he also is a statesman. He's also a politician. And one of the things people like to say about Trump is he's not a politician, but that's profession. Being a politician is a profession. And you have to know how to do it. You have to know how to wrangle people and pass laws and not just pass executive orders that can be swept away by the next guy with a pen.
I know I can ask you about the wokesters and the crazy lefties all day long, and we could do hours and hours on it. And I've watched your videos on Instagram where you watch videos of them doing weird things and all that stuff. But let me ask you one thing about that. Because of someone, as you mentioned, you lived in the Hollywood Hills. You were in the Hollywood machine as a screenwriter and as an author. I'm guessing that you probably had representation with some of those big organizations and all that kind of stuff. Sure. Did it feel like it was going to fall apart? Did you always sense that it would fall apart in that way? I don't mean California specifically, but the industry and just the way the culture war has just exploded because they decided to not give us anything remotely honest or reflective of how people felt about the world.
Well, I was warning about it for 20 years. I was saying that it's not, we pour all this money into some, House race in Ohio, but we don't pour any money into creating novels, into creating movies, into creating the infrastructure that the arts need. Everybody is on the right is celebrating the failure of that movie Bros, but it's one thing to celebrate failures of movies that offend your sensibilities. It's another thing to make your own movies and to also give awards to artists and encouragement to artists and intelligent reviews to artists. Some of that's happening now. It has been a long, slow slog. But yeah, you can vote for people all you want. But if you lose the culture, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. And I've been thinking, as I read the news now and watch things, one of the greatest arguments for Christianity is that people who lose it become utterly evil. I mean, they're butchering children in the name of a weird left-wing gender theory that has absolutely no scientific backing. They keep, people like Rachel Levine, who's to me a walking Monty Python routine. He comes out, he says things, well, the data, and nobody ever says to him, show me the data.
Yeah.
Show me that, because there is no data. There couldn't possibly be data supporting the butchering of children.
But Andrew, they are the science. That's why you're not supposed to question them. They are science.
When Vladimir Putin is screaming about the Satanism of the West, Vladimir Putin, who I think is a terrible, terrible human being and an awful dictator and a colonialist and all these things, but he's saying that and I'm thinking, well, I have to agree with him there. He does have a point there. So the culture is really at a nadir. And what I see coming forward is basically a division between people who opt to be human beings and people who opt for a technocratic world. Eventually, they'll build synthetic wombs, and women will actually become obsolete as mothers. And it's going to be people who choose to say, no, actually, women are essential as mothers, that mothers are essential to our humanity, and we cannot farm this out to these technocrats. And that's what I see in the future. I'm hoping basically they'll give me another 20, 30 years if I can get out of here and leave you guys, you younger people, to deal with it. But I do see that coming eventually.
Yeah, well, that's sort of why I was asking you the question about what do you want to happen to California, or what do you think will happen, because I agree. I think although we will remain united in that I don't think we're going to have a civil war in some sort of traditional sense, I just think the things are just going to diverge. It just is what it is. We've tried very hard, sane people, to reverse the wokesters. They've made it very clear they're not going to reverse, and unfortunately, the institutions have shown that they don't have the defenses to defend against it. So it's just going to continue to go in that direction.
Yeah, and there's the question of money, because what happens in leftism all the time, and I guess we can call this leftism, it's some kind of part of leftism, is the middle class is destroyed or moves away. So you have the poor and you have the powerful, and that's what happens every single time. And that means that you don't have a tax base. And so in order to feed the programs that keep you in power and keep the poor from coming and burning your palace down, you basically have to shift money from other places. And so you're going to see a move by the federal government to try and take money from prosperous places like Florida and like Tennessee and move it to places that are dying of leftism like California. And that's when the clash is going to come. And if that is prevented, if that kind of shift of money is prevented, then I don't know. I just think things fail. Leftism fails everywhere it's tried. Scandinavia, Russia, Cuba, everywhere it's tried. It's much easier to enslave a little island like Cuba than it is to enslave Westerners and people who have a history of freedom.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.